Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Daya Koro More Toma Hina Kedaya Jagata Sansare Patita Pavana Hetu Tava Vatara Mosama Patita Prabhu Nabai Vihara Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swami Iti Namane Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pacharine Nirvishesha Sanyavadi Vasachari Satani. Jai Jai Shri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda. Jai Jai Shri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda. Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Jai Jai Shri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda. Jai Jai Shri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda. Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Jai Jai Shri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda. Jai Jai Shri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda. Jaya Advaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Jaya Advaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna. I'm very happy to be with all of you today on this auspicious day of Sri Gaura Purnima. I had a choice to stay in Mayapur or to come to Kyiv. So I decided that New Navadvip would be a better option for me this time. Everyone. So it is an auspicious day, as we said, and because it is the day when Lord Chaitanya appeared in this world. I chose a verse from the Chaitanya Charitamrita, Madhya Lila, chapter 6, to speak from. It's a very nice verse that was composed by Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya. Of course, it's contained within the text of Chaitanya Charitamrita by Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami. But there's this and one other verse, actually many other verses, but particularly these two verses were extemporaneously composed by Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya shortly after he had been defeated and completely changed by Lord Chaitanya's association. Previously, he was affected by impersonal philosophy. And he was described as the personification or the reservoir of bad logic. But due to his association with Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he became very exalted Vaishnava. And was one of the contemporary associates of Lord Chaitanya. So I'll read the verse, and I see it's on the board, so we'll chant it, and then we'll read the translation. And a commentary by Srila Prabhupada. Kalat Nashtam Bhakti Yogam Nijam Ya Pradushkartum Krishna Chaitanya Nama Avirbhuta Tasya Pada Adavinde Gadham Liyatam Chitta-bringa Kalanashtam Bhakti Yogam Nilamya Kalam Nashtam Bhakti Yogam Nijamya Pradushkartum Krishna Chaitanya Nama Pradushkartum Krishna Chaitanya Nama Avirbhutastasya Padaravinде Avirbhutastasya Padaravinде Gadham gadham liyatam chitta bringa. Gadham gadham liyatam chitta bringa. Kalannashtam bhakti yogam nijam ya. Praduskartum Krishna Chaitanya nama. Avirbhutastasya padara vinde. Gadham gadham liyatam chitta bringa. There's nobody to chant? Or should I just go ahead and continue? How about one from each? One man, one woman.
Kalanashtam bhakti yogam nijamya.
Kalanashtam bhakti yogam nijamya.
Pradushkartum Krishna Chaitanya nama.
Pradushkartum Krishna Chaitanya nama.
Avirbhutastasya padara vinde.
Avirbhutastasya padara vinde.
Gadham gadham liyatam chita bringa.
Gadham gadham liyatam chita bringa.
Ladies?
Mataji.
Kalanashtam bhakti yogam nijamya. Pradushkartum Krishna Chaitanya nama. Avirbhutastasya padara vinde. Gadham gadham liyatam chita bringa.
Kalat. Just don't repeat. Nashtam. Go ahead. I see. I know, I understand. Bhakti yogam.
Bhakti yogam.
Nijam.
Nijam.
Ya. Pradushkartum. Krishna Chaitanya nama.
Krishna Chaitanya nama.
Avirbhuta.
Avirbhuta.
Tasya. Para Arvinde. Gadham gadham. Liyatam. Chitta bringa. Let my consciousness, which is like a honeybee, take shelter of the lotus feet of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who has just now appeared as Sri Krishna Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to teach the ancient system of devotional service to himself. This system had almost been lost due to the influence of time. I'm going to read the previous text also because both of them are together. Vairagya Vidya Nija Bhakti Yoga Sikshartameka Purusha Purana Shri Krishna Chaitanya Sarira Dhardi Kripambudhir Yastamaham Prapadye. Let me take shelter of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna, who has descended in the form of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to teach us real knowledge, his devotional service, and detachment from whatever does not foster Krishna consciousness. He has descended because he is an ocean of transcendental mercy. Let me surrender unto his lotus feet. And one more time, let my consciousness, which is like a honeybee, take shelter of the lotus feet of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who has just now appeared as Sri Krishna Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, to teach the ancient system of devotional service to himself. This system had almost been lost due to the influence of time. Purport. As stated in Bhagavad Gita, Yada yada hi dharmasya glanya bhavati bhardata abhyutanam adharmasya tadatmanam shrijamyaham. Whenever and wherever there is decline in religious practice, O descendant of Bharata, and a predominant rise of irreligion, at that time I descend myself. Bhagavad Gita, chapter 4, text 7. This is also the case with Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's appearance. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu appeared in this world as a disguised incarnation of Krishna, but his appearance is confirmed in Srimad Bhagavatam, Mahabharata, and other Vedic scriptures. He appeared to teach the fallen souls in this material world, for in this age of Kali almost everyone has become attached to fruitive and ritualistic activities and mental speculation. Consequently, there was a great need to revive the system of devotional service. The Lord himself personally came down, disguised as a devotee, so that the fallen populace might take advantage of the Lord's example. At the conclusion of Bhagavad Gita, Lord Krishna advised complete surrender unto him, promising all protection to his devotee. Unfortunately, people are so fallen that they cannot accept the instructions of Lord Krishna. Therefore, Krishna returned with the same mission, but he executed it in a different way. Sorry, I lost my place. As Lord Sri Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, he ordered us to surrender unto himself. But as Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he taught us how to surrender to Krishna. Therefore, he is praised by the Goswamis, Namo Mahavanyaya Krishna Prema Pradayate. Lord Sri Krishna is certainly the personality of Godhead, but he is not as magnanimous as Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Lord Krishna simply gave orders for one to become his devotee, Manmana Bhavan Mad Bhakta, but Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu actually taught the process of Krishna consciousness. If one wants to become a devotee of Krishna, he must first take shelter of the lotus feet of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, following in the footsteps of Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya and other exalted devotees. Om Ajnanatimirandasya Giranjana Salakaya Chaksho Unmilitam Dhyena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Mukam Karoti Vachalam Pangunlantayate Garim Yat Kripa Tamaham Bande Shri Gurun Dinataranam Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Pristaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swamin Iti Namane Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pacharane Nirvishesha Shanyavari Paschachade Satarane Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaura Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So, as we said, these two verses were composed by Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya. And he composed them after he had been soundly defeated by Lord Chaitanya. There were many events which led to that defeat. And to delineate all of those events would probably take us to 4:30. But we want to talk about the appearance of Lord Chaitanya, which is spoken about in this verse. And Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya is a good example, one good example of why Lord Chaitanya appeared. As we said before, he was known as the reservoir of all bad logic. He could not appreciate Lord Chaitanya's position. In a discussion with his brother-in-law, Gopinath Acharya, he was trying to suggest that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu should become a higher sannyasi by being instructed by him. He had suggested that Lord Chaitanya had taken sannyas from an inferior sampradaya and gave many other reasons why it would be in his best interest that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu would hear Vedanta from him in an effort to protect his renunciation, since he took sannyas at a very young age. Of course, Gopinath Acharya, he was a devotee of the Lord. He became very angry, and he had an exchange with Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, trying to convince him and his followers also that you cannot possibly understand who Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is. And it's clear that you don't have the mercy of the Lord, and therefore, because you don't have the mercy of the Lord, you cannot see that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is none different than the Supreme Lord himself. Now, of course, Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya at that time was thinking he was going to be merciful to Lord Chaitanya. But Gopinath Acharya tried to explain to his brother-in-law that Lord Chaitanya is not dependent on these external formalities. He doesn't need to take sannyas at all. And you don't understand because you have misunderstood the conclusions of scriptures, and therefore you cannot even recognize that he has all the characteristics of the Supreme Lord. So, again, there was some argument between Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya and Gopinath Acharya. But at the end, Gopinath Acharya tried to bring it to not only logic, but tried to bring it to scriptural evidence that everything that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's appearance has been given in the scriptures, but you cannot see that. And Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya tried to give scriptural evidence that he had to say, well, actually the Supreme Lord is known as Triyuga. He appears in 3 yugas. So according to my scriptural understanding, he cannot be the Supreme Personality of Godhead because this is Kali Yuga. Therefore, as is described in this verse, Lord Chaitanya in Kali Yuga, he appeared as a disguised incarnation. He didn't appear as the Supreme Lord. And yet, he appeared as a devotee of the Lord, although he is Krishna himself. And then Gopinath Acharya began citing the evidence that he was familiar with, which established Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's appearance thousands of years before he even appeared. Krishna Vana Trisha Krishnam Sankopagashtra Prashadam Yagai Sankirtanaya Yajanti Hi Sumedasa. This verse, of course, is in the Srimad Bhagavatam, 11th canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam, which describes that the Lord appears in this age, but he is Akrishna. He is not blackish, but he has a different color complexion, which is golden. And he's appeared with his associates. Of course, there is a lot to be given in reference to Shastric evidence for the appearance of Lord Chaitanya, not only in the Srimad Bhagavatam, in 3 different places in the Srimad Bhagavatam has Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's appearance been proclaimed. In the Mahabharata, there is a verse also describes that the Lord will appear in the age of Kali with a golden complexion. And in his youth, he was a householder. He became a householder and preached Krishna consciousness. But later took sannyas. And this is in Mahabharata. And there's so many different references in Shastra, but for some reason Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya was oblivious to the existence of these references. What he does with all scripture is that he takes his conclusion first and he presents the scripture to support his own conclusions. And this is the basis for which Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was able to defeat him. He defeated him because when Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya said, why don't you hear from me? Let me speak Vedanta. I will speak to you and enlighten you. And Lord Chaitanya simply said, yes, I want to hear from you. You are my superior in all respects. Lord Chaitanya, of course, appeared as a Vaishnava. And one of the characteristics of a Vaishnava is dainya, humility. And we see so many references of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And when he defeated others, he did it in such a way that he was always very, very humble, and it was very attractive. When he defeated Prakashananda Saraswati, he sat in an unclean place where they washed their feet. He was in the presence of 60,000 Mayavadi sannyasis. And he simply sat in an unclean place and took the lower position. And he manifested a brilliance, an effulgence which was brighter than so many suns. And because they were attracted to Brahman, they became very much attracted to Lord Chaitanya because of his effulgence. But he took the very humble position, sitting there and speaking with Prakashananda Saraswati, who was the leader of all the Mayavadi sannyasis. And when Prakashananda Saraswati said, "Why are you behaving like a sentimentalist, chanting and dancing in the streets? Why don't you study Vedanta with us so that you can become truly renounced?" He said, "My spiritual master considered me to be a fool." Imagine saying this. That I was already described by my spiritual master, who recognized my position. I am a fool. And saying this in the presence of Prakashananda Saraswati. It's sort of like a testimony. I'm a fool. What can I know? And of course, Prakashananda Saraswati, he saw it as, yes, you're foolish, you should come and hear from us. And we'll teach you Vedanta. He was proud, and Lord Chaitanya knew he was proud. Therefore, he manifested such humility that he was defeated. Prakashananda Saraswati was not only defeated by his humility, but he later was defeated by his knowledge of Vedanta. Keshava Kashmiri, similarly, he was the Digvijay. He was known for his knowledge. He defeated everybody in argument. And he had heard about this scholar named Nimai Pandit, who was known for being very successful in logic and argument, and he wanted to add him to his fame by defeating him. And he very proudly came before Nimai Pandit, who was sitting with his students, and he challenged him to engage in logic and argument in a battle with him. But again, Lord Chaitanya took a very humble position. In fact, he asked Keshava Kashmiri, maybe you can cite extemporaneously some words glorifying the Ganges, and Keshava Kashmiri immediately recited how many verses? Was it 100 verses? 100 verses glorifying the Ganga. And Lord Chaitanya, he found a little mistake in one of the verses that he had composed and pointed it out to Keshava Kashmiri. And when his students saw when Lord Chaitanya's students saw what he had done to Keshava Kashmiri, they began laughing, and Lord Chaitanya said, no, don't do that. Because he knew that Keshava Kashmiri was so proud of his knowledge. If he had been soundly defeated in the presence of everyone else, then he would have given up his life. He would have died on the spot. So instead, Nimai Pandit said, because Keshava Kashmiri was overwhelmed that Nimai Pandit could have found a mistake in his explanations and glorification of the Ganga, he couldn't speak anymore. He was speechless. And the reason why he couldn't speak is because the goddess Saraswati didn't agree to be on his tongue, so he can no longer speak anymore. And Keshava Kashmiri became bewildered because he couldn't say anything. It was the first time he was rendered speechless. He never happened before. But what did Nimai Pandit do? He said, why don't you just think about what I've spoken about? Just go home, think about it, and come back tomorrow and we can discuss it a little bit further. Because he didn't want to destroy him in the presence of everyone else. He was so merciful. We can give so many examples how Chaitanya Mahaprabhu displayed the characteristic of humility, which is the primary characteristic of a Vaishnava. So when Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya invited him to hear Vedanta from him, Lord Chaitanya said, "You are superior. I should sit. My body belongs to you now. I've given my body to you. You do with it as you like." And now somebody may say, why did he do that? We're so much accustomed sometimes when we hear some little deviation, we have to immediately smash it to pieces. But Lord Chaitanya, excuse me, where was I? Open it up to, in case I have to look back again. Lord Chaitanya, he had a different strategy. Not only did he want to defeat them, but he wanted them to become devotees. So he behaved like a Vaishnava. And he behaved in a very humble way and captured Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya's attention in this way. So he appeared to sit there, and for 7 continuous days, he listened to Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya speak on Vedanta. Somebody may say, how could he tolerate that? Here he was, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, in the disguise of a devotee of the Lord. And he was sitting and listening to impersonal philosophy. And what was the essence of the impersonal philosophy that Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya was speaking? And that is that he had his own conclusion first, and then scripture was used as a means for supporting his conclusion. Therefore, Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya had very selectively taken his verses to deny that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu could be the Supreme Personality of Godhead by the evidence of scripture. And Gopinath Acharya, he presented his scriptural evidence to explain how he was the Supreme Personality of Godhead, but because he didn't have the mercy of the Lord, he couldn't see it. And he even quoted the verse from Srimad Bhagavatam, Atapite deva pudam bhuja dvaya prasada lisano gurhita evihi. Unless one gets a drop of mercy for the Supreme Personality of God, from the lotus feet of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, one can never understand the greatness of his personality. Anyways, so Lord Chaitanya sat there for 7 continuous days and listened to Vedanta. And on the 8th day, Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya said, usually if somebody sits and listens to that long for me, he must have some question. And then Lord Chaitanya says, yes, I've been sitting and listening to the truths that you have been speaking from the Vedanta because they're self-effulgent truths. But the reason why I haven't asked anything is it's very difficult for me to hear anything from you. Because you have clouded the meaning of these self-effulgent verses with your own interpretations. And therefore, I'm afraid to ask a question because I don't want to listen to you. So Lord Chaitanya sat there for 7 days, and this little discourse took place on the 8th day. And then, of course, Lord Chaitanya established on the basis of Vedanta how the conclusions that Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya had given were faulty conclusions. And then Lord Chaitanya, many things discussed, but I can't go into all the detail. But I want to get to the real reason why Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya wrote these 2 verses spontaneously. Actually, Lord Chaitanya, then he asked, towards the end, before he defeated him, he asked Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya if he could explain the Atmarama verse from the Srimad Bhagavatam. And Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya took the Atmarama verse and he explained it according to scriptural evidence. And he gave 9 explanations of the Atmarama verse according to scripture. And after giving his 9 explanations, again, pride. He was very proud of what he had accomplished. And Lord Chaitanya, in all his humility, he took the Atmarama verse and he presented it in 18 different ways and didn't touch once upon an explanation given by Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya. Of course, we have to understand that humility doesn't mean silence. Humility is what is tolerance, and humility is how he displayed himself in the presence of those who he presented to be superior to himself. It's very hard to take the humble position in the presence of somebody that you know you're superior to. But Lord Chaitanya, he did this every time. He did it with Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, he did it with Prabodhananda Saraswati, he did it with Keshava Kashmiri, he did it with there was the Buddhist monk, I think also he did it. There was somebody else, many people, evidences. But then he just presented Vedanta and scriptural evidence to support the evidence of the Atmarama verse. And when Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya heard that he presented the Atmarama verse in 18 different ways, he started to think, you must be Krishna himself. It just entered his mind, although he heard it from Gopinathacharya, he heard it from others, but he couldn't hear it until he received the mercy of the Lord. When he received the mercy of the Lord, then he could and accepted it as the mercy of the Lord. That's the biggest jump, the biggest step to go over. When you accept it as the mercy of the Lord. Just like who was it? The brahmachari who was in the kirtan at the house of Srivas Thakur. Who tried to get into the kirtan because he thought he was very, very renounced. And he was very austere. And he thought he was very austere only because he drank a little milk and ate fruits and roots from the forest. So when Srivas Thakur heard about this from the brahmachari, he was thinking, okay, I'll let you in. And Lord Chaitanya was chanting in his ecstatic kirtans as he was in the house of Srivas Thakur. And all of a sudden he stopped. Somebody in here is not a devotee. He immediately sensed it. Somebody in here is not a devotee. Because at this particular time, Lord Chaitanya was having his nocturnal kirtans exclusively with his devotees. Of course, later we know he took this kirtan out into the streets and freely distributed it to everybody without any discrimination. Which was the primary purpose for his appearance, is to spread love of God. Of course, it's given that external reasons for Lord Chaitanya's appearance was to distribute pure love of God to everyone and to answer the call of Advaita Acharya. And therefore it's quoted here in this purport, Namo Mahavananyaya Krishna Prema Pradayate, that Lord Chaitanya is the most merciful incarnation of the Lord because he appeared to freely distribute what no other incarnation of the Lord ever distributed before. I did it. What should I do? Can I go a little bit longer? It's up to 6. Ooh. Okay. And anyways, so Lord Chaitanya came to distribute pure love of God. That was one of the reasons for his descent. And another reason was to answer the call of Advaita Acharya. I'll get back to that in a second. Let's finish with the brahmachari. Because it's an interesting example. What happens when somebody accepts the mercy? So this brahmachari was allowed in by Srivas Thakur to take part in these nocturnal kirtans in his home. Because he convinced Srivas of his qualification, because he was very, very renounced and ate very, very simple, just a little milk. So he entered into the kirtan, and Lord Chaitanya understood that somebody here is not a devotee. He stopped. And he said, somebody here is not a devotee. Srivas was nervous because he let him in. He let him in. He said, but he only drinks a little milk. He's very austere. And Lord Chaitanya screamed, what? Just because he's a milk drinker, that is his qualification to see my pastimes? One has to be truly qualified to see my pastimes. Not simply because he drinks milk and eats a few berries and roots. Without devotional service, how can anyone understand my pastimes? Lord Chaitanya, out! Merely showed him the door. But then the brahmachari was thinking, in his mind, he said, how wonderful, I've been chastised like this. Such mercy I've never received before. And as he was walking to the door, Lord Chaitanya said, stop. Because he was good as the all-pervasive super soul. He knew what was going on in his heart. He knew the brahmachari accepted his chastisement. And because he accepted it, then Lord Chaitanya gave his mercy. And he told him, come back. Come back into the kirtan. He said, just don't think that by drinking milk and eating roots you can achieve my darshan like ever again. It's one thing to get mercy, but it's another thing to accept it as mercy. And Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya accepted, I've been defeated. And he could immediately understand, you must be Krishna. And then, of course, as we know that Lord Chaitanya was very merciful to Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya. After Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya prostrated himself at his lotus feet and accepted him as the Supreme Lord, and for having been so foolish, then Lord Chaitanya manifested a very wonderful form in Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya's presence. He manifested, what is a 6-arm form? Sadbhuj, yes, 6-arm form. 4 hands holding the club, conch shell, disc, and lotus flower, and 2 hands holding the flute. And from that point on, Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya accepted devotional service. Simply to be the highest. That's what Lord Chaitanya appeared to establish, as we just read about in this verse. Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, he composed these verses. Actually, what happened is that Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, because he had become a great devotee of the Lord, he took darshan of Lord Jagannath, and he got some Jagannath prasadam, and then he returned to his home with, I think, Jagadananda and Mukunda. And then, while he was at his home, he composed these 2 verses on a palm leaf. The 2 verses that we just quoted. The first was Vairagya Vijja Nigja Bhakti Yoga. Let me take shelter of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Shri Krishna, who has descended in the form of Lord Chaitanya, Mahaprabhu, to teach us real knowledge, his devotional service, and detachment from whatever does not foster Krishna consciousness. He has descended because he is an ocean of transcendental mercy. Let me surrender unto his lotus feet. And then the verse we read, let my consciousness, which is like a honeybee, take shelter of the lotus feet of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who has just now appeared as Sri Krishna Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to teach the ancient system of devotional service to himself. So here, Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya declares that Lord Chaitanya appeared to teach the ancient system of devotional service, which had almost been lost due to the influence of time. So he wrote these 2 verses on palm leaves, and he gave them to Jagadananda, and told him to bring these palm leaves to Lord Chaitanya. And he was also bringing prasadam from Lord Jagannath to Lord Chaitanya as well. So Mukunda was thinking, before he went on with the palm leaves, he said, give me the palm leaves first. And Mukunda took the palm leaves and he copied from the palm leaves on the side of the hut where Lord Chaitanya was staying. He copied the verses. Because he was thinking, Lord Chaitanya's not going to like this. Because Lord Chaitanya appeared as Chana avatar, hidden incarnation. He didn't like to be called the Supreme Lord. He came as a devotee of the Lord, and not just as an ordinary devotee of the Lord. His external reason for appearing was, as we said, was to teach love of Godhead indiscriminately, give love of Godhead to everyone through the chanting of the holy name of the Lord. And to answer the call of Advaita Acharya, who is very much anxious to see the materialistic society. Advaita Acharya, he appeared before Lord Chaitanya. And he is known as the most renowned Vaishnava in Navadvipa at the time. But there were so few Vaishnavas in Navadvipa at that time. Only those that the Lord had asked to descend before him to help him and assist him in his pastimes. And they were all special devotees who had descended by the request of the Lord to take birth in different places throughout Navadvipa and Radhadesh and the whole region, to purify those places. And then, understanding that the Lord would soon appear, they began to congregate in Navadvipa. But nobody else was interested. Besides them, nobody was interested in hearing about devotional service. They studied scripture only because it was a vehicle for logic and argument. And they used to get into debates with one another on the basis of scripture, arguing with one another. And people would never have big gatherings where they would chant the holy name of the Lord together. They had gatherings only to come together for weddings and birthdays. They considered this is auspicious reason for gathering. And when these few Vaishnavas would try to preach to them that there is a greater purpose to life than simply to live for weddings and birthdays, there's more to life, nobody was interested. And then Advaita Acharya was feeling great pain to see the condition of materialistic society. And he decided, I will worship Krishna himself, and by offering Ganges water and Tulsi leaf. And I will beg him to come, because only if he comes will he be able to make these materialist devotees of the Lord. So Lord Chaitanya heard these prayers. He said while he was lying in Svetadweep, he heard his nada calling him, requesting him to come. Another name for Advaita Acharya was nada. Anyways, so these were the two reasons given in Chaitanya Charitamrita. They were given as secondary reasons. Or they were also given as external reasons. But when we hear them as external reasons, we should not think external in terms of, it's inferior. How could it be inferior when the reason is coming from the Supreme Personality of Godhead himself? Why would Rupa Goswami glorify Lord Chaitanya as Namo Mahavadanyaya, the most merciful incarnation of the Lord? Because he came to freely distribute what nobody else ever came to distribute before. So we should not think that because there are external reasons and internal reasons for the Lord's appearance, the external reason was inferior. But his internal reason, which was given by Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami, is because he wanted to understand the sweetness of Krishna. He wanted to understand the glories of Radharani's love for him, because he couldn't understand that, because he was Krishna. And he wanted to taste the same bliss. Why is Radharani tasting so much bliss serving me, millions of times more bliss serving me than I get serving them? I can't know that. It's impossible for him to know that. He knows everything else. He knows past, present, and future. He knows everything that is yet to come. He knows all living beings. But he didn't know why Radharani was experiencing so much bliss in serving him. So Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami gives those as internal reasons for Lord Chaitanya's appearance. He wanted to taste what Radharani tastes in loving him. He's a person. Why shouldn't he have desires? How can one not have desires and just be a person? It's the symptom of life to have desires. But he couldn't taste it. So he had to come as Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who is the combined form of Radha and Krishna. He is Krishna himself, but combined. Of course, Prabhupada says in one lecture, which is part of the introduction to Chaitanya Charitamrita, we should not say when Krishna wanted to become one. As soon as we say when, then immediately we speak in terms of time. So that means it's time. And I think it's time for the Artik. So these are different reasons for Lord Chaitanya's appearance. And just let me tell you what happened to those two pieces, those two verses on the palm leaf. Mukunda understand. He's not going to like it. He appeared as a devotee. He's not going to like it when he sees that you're calling him the Supreme Lord. So he wrote these two verses on the side of the hut. And then the Jagadananda went in with the palm leaves. He showed them to Lord Chaitanya. And Lord Chaitanya took them and ripped them up, tore them up. But the devotees had already memorized what they saw on the outside of the hut. They had already committed it completely to their memories. And therefore these verses are described in Chaitanya Charitamrita, that they resound louder than the beating of hundreds of drums. That Lord Chaitanya appeared to teach the ancient system of devotional service to himself. So my time is up, and it's time for Artik. Thank you for being patient with me. Hare Krishna, all glories to Srila Prabhupada.